If I dropped you into Ice Age Europe tonight, you would probably be dead by breakfast. Not because you are weak, because around 26,000 years ago, winter did not kill you in some dramatic movie scene. It killed you through admin, wet clothing, a weak shelter seam, meat stored badly, a fire that burned too low at 3 a.m, one child coughing at the wrong time, one hunter coming back with nothing. That was enough. And yet early humans kept surviving winters like that for thousands of years. So what exactly did they know that you do not? At Dolní Věstonice, in what is now the Czech Republic, archaeologists led by G. Svoboda found the remains of a winter camp from the Gravettian period, hearths, mammoth bones, tools, storage features, and the traces of a system so practical it makes the caveman stereotype look drunk. These people were not stumbling through the cold on raw toughness. They had infrastructure. That is the part most people miss. The real survival skill was not hunting. It was preparation. Call it stored summer. That is the phrase to keep. Because winter was not beaten in winter. Winter was beaten months earlier, when the animals were still fat, the wood was still gatherable, and your fingers still worked well enough to sew something without swearing at a bone needle. If your group failed to turn autumn into calories, fuel, clothing, and shelter, then by January you were not surviving winter. You were just arguing with it. And winter does not negotiate. Start with food, because food is where the romance dies first. A mammoth was not one meal. A mammoth was meat, marrow, grease, hide, bone, cordage, shelter material, and if things got bad enough, fuel. A large animal was less dinner than inventory. That sounds cold. It had to be. At Upper Paleolithic sites across Europe, archaeologists keep finding the same pattern. Heavy butchery marks, intense marrow extraction, fat processing, and absolutely no sign that humans were leaving usable calories behind because they wanted to feel elegant about it. Fat mattered more than modern people realize. A lean animal is food. A fat animal is time. Time is what winter eats first. The food was there. The future was not. And then there was storage. Frozen ground is just a freezer if you are smart enough to use it correctly. At sites like Dolní Věstonice, evidence suggests these people understood perfectly well that some places preserved and some places spoiled. They knew where cold helped and where damp ruined everything. That is not instinct. That is ugly, boring, life-saving logistics. The kind of thing nobody writes songs about because the meat pit was properly managed does not sound heroic. It was still the reason children kept breathing. Then fire. People talk about fire like it was warmth, community, storytelling, all that lovely stuff. Fine, sure, sometimes. But first, fire was border control. Inside the light, you were still a camp. Outside it, you were a soft, tired primate with terrible night vision. Someone had fire duty. That person did not sleep properly. They fed embers in the dark. They checked the weak spots in the shelter. They woke when the glow dropped. By morning their clothes and hair smelled like smoke, old fat and damp hide. It was not a pleasant smell. It was just the smell of still being here. And in places where wood ran low, the fuel got uglier. Burned mammoth bone has been identified at several Ice Age sites, which means one animal kept helping after it died. First as food, then as grease, then as tool material, then, if the fuel pile ran thin, as heat. The mammoth did not stop working when the meat was gone, it just changed departments. Now clothing, because this is where the cartoon really falls apart. Most people still picture prehistoric humans in one sad animal skin, thrown over one shoulder like they are auditioning for a very low-budget museum. The evidence says otherwise. A 2011 study in Molecular Biology and Evolution used lice genetics to argue that clothing may go back at least around 170,000 years. That is long before cities, before farming, before metal, before any of the things people usually use to define advanced. You were dressed before you were civilized. And by the time you reach Sunghir in Russia, around 34,000 years ago, the evidence gets almost rude. 2 children were buried there with more than 10,000 ivory beads sewn onto their clothing, not dropped beside them. Sewn on. Researchers including Eric Trinkos helped reconstruct what that implied. Fitted garments, shaped sleeves, leggings, proper tailoring. In the Ice Age, One estimate puts the labour for a single ivory bead at around 45 minutes. That is thousands of hours of work stitched onto children's clothing in a world where winter could still erase your food supply in a week. The cold did not erase beauty, it made beauty expensive. And clothing was not decoration first. It was engineering. Layering, stitching, hide preparation, fit around joints, coverage for hands and feet. All of that matters once the air is cold enough to turn a small mistake into a funeral. Wet clothing was a slow disaster. Bad seams leaked heat. Poor fit meant exposed skin. Exposed skin meant numb fingers. Numb fingers meant slower work. Slower work meant more mistakes. Winter did not forgive mistakes. It multiplied them. Shelter was the same story. At Mezhyrich in Ukraine, around 15,000 years ago, humans built structures from mammoth bones, skulls, jaws, long bones arranged into wind-breaking walls on the open steppe. This was not one genius doing prehistoric architecture for fun. This was coordinated labour by people who understood one thing very clearly. Courage is not insulation. You do not defeat winter with bravery. You defeat it with walls. And with people. This is the central reframe. Early humans did not survive winter because they were individually tougher than you. They survived because they were less alone than you are imagining. The group was the technology. Not the spear, not the fire, not even the clothing. The group. At Shanidar, much earlier and in a different region, one famous Neanderthal individual known as Shanidar I survived with severe injuries that would have made solo survival almost impossible. He lived for years. Somebody fed him. Somebody protected him. Somebody kept him inside the social perimeter, when pure efficiency would have said otherwise. That decision becomes more impressive when you place it next to winter, because winter reveals everything. Hunger is not private. Weakness is not private. If one person is coughing through the night, everybody hears it. If supplies are low, every mouth changes the math. If the person on fire duty falls asleep, everybody pays. The cold reveals you, which is why the lone survivor fantasy is nonsense. A human alone in deep winter was not a hero. A human alone in deep winter was a delayed body. The real miracle was cooperation under pressure. People storing food they could have eaten earlier. People sewing clothing for weather that had not arrived yet. People keeping weak members alive when scarcity made that expensive. People waking in the dark to feed a fire no one would thank them for in the morning. Stored summer was never just food. It was trust. And now compare that to your winter. Your winter emergency is a heating bill, a dead battery, a bad commute. Maybe that dramatic little moment where you left your coat in the other room and behaved as if nature had launched a personal attack. Their winter was simpler. If the fire dies, move. If the stores are thin, everybody knows. If the group cracks, winter finishes the job. So no, early humans did not survive because they were magical cave monsters with superhuman pain tolerance. They survived because they turned dead animals into infrastructure, cold ground into storage, sewing into engineering, and other human beings into a system stronger than any one body inside it. That was the trick. The fire stayed alive because somebody stayed awake.